All right, Jim Lifers, welcome and back to another special interview with a guest that we wanted to kick off 2022 with. A pretty special guy in the strength business. I guess I'll ask him what his title is because he's got many, but welcome, Taylor Gohn. Thanks for joining me, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Well, how would you define yourself before we get started here? You know, you're a personal trainer it would be an abuse to call you that. How do you describe yourself or define yourself these days?
I guess I guess a coach is the most accurate term, but I kind of feel that social media and this industry has kind of tainted that term a little bit. But from what I know what a coach is, I think that's the most accurate thing I would call myself.
Yeah, that's kind of a broader definition of everything you do, because I know even with your athletes that you train, you're not limited to a specific genre. I mean, not to get too far ahead, because we'll talk about this more in the interview, but you're a special kind of coach because you haven't cornholed yourself into one demographic of lifter. You represent pretty much all three categories. Training with Derek Lunsford, I know that as a pro bodybuilder. Of course, Ben Pollock as a power lifter first, and now a pro bodybuilder. I know you're working with Evan Signalton coming up this year. You've broadened your range when a lot of guys don't do that. Let me ask you before you answer questions pertaining to that, how did all this start for you? Where did your love for lifting begin, and where did you kind of find yourself falling into the path that you've carved out for yourself in the last 20 years?
So this has to go a little bit back to my childhood a little bit, because both my grandfather and my father were wrestling coaches, and not just like part of the year. It was like all year round. We'd always be having their athletes stay the night at our house. I'd be watching, my mom cook them food and stuff, taking to tournaments, taking everybody home. It was just most of my life was just growing up around the coach and athlete relationship. And then I went on to wrestle in college, and when you're a high level athlete, coaches and teachers and everyone, they kind of suck your dick a little bit and make you feel special, but they don't really help you plan for what happens when you're done.
Right.
And so I had a pretty rude awakening when I couldn't compete anymore. I had an injury in my groin. It's kind of I couldn't really ever get a straight answer on it, but I'm pretty sure I tore my psoas or fucked something up down that way towards my groin and adductor. But basically I couldn't continue. I spent a whole year trying to rehab, took a red shirt year, and just still couldn't do it. So all within about 2 weeks, my father, my wrestling coach, my grandfather, all my teammates, it was just kind of like, you're done now, get fucked, don't come home. And so I found myself extremely angry, and in the weight room, because as you know, that's a lot of times the only place left that'll take you.
It's therapeutic.
So that was my initial experience, and then really kind of trying to sort through a lot of that anger, and kind of, it's either you sort through it or you're fucking miserable and you make poor decisions and you get yourself in trouble, right? So having to sort through all this stuff, I didn't really know what I was doing, that I wanted to be this kind of coach, or what I wanted to represent, but I knew I was doing something. I knew I was, trying to pursue something. I just didn't fully know what it was yet. And then as, you start growing up and maturing a little bit, getting over some of this stuff, start figuring out who you want to be and what you want to be as a coach. And so now I'm kind of coming full circle, because I'm looking back at things and I'm like, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to be the coach that I never had. I want to be the coach. I want to be I had so many great coaches, but they all had a ton of flaws, more flaws than positives, right? And I want to take that one thing that they had that impacted me and be that for someone else, and put all those good things together.
Yeah, it seems like your story kind of started with the tragedy. Then it wasn't like a lot of guys do when they're coming up through the ranks of lifting and getting into this game where you want to be a coach or train people. Generally, it's usually attached to something, I guess you'd say, more positive. But for you, it was driven from more of a dark place,
It
which
was.
kind of makes sense, knowing your I guess not knowing you, but knowing kind of where your personality comes from, more in a you've got a unique perspective on things that you share a lot on social media. When did that kind of turn for you, though? Was it in college? Did you study any type of particular sports science or anything of that nature? And when did you start making your way down that path as a coach?
As just the technical side of the coaching.
Yeah.
Um, so it was actually personal training background. I did study. What was the subject? I never finished school, but I got through the majority of it. It was applied health science. It was whatever the exercise program was. But basically, when I got injured, I was, like I said, hanging out in the weight room a lot, and there were other athletes from other sports that I was friends with, and they had known that I was a little bit better at lifting than everyone else and that sort of thing. So I was kind of like, I had a couple other athletes that I would train just for free because they're my friends, and I really enjoyed doing it. And eventually, let's see what happened. So eventually, like, a scholarship was no good anymore, right? Because I'm injured, so had to quit school. Eventually, I come home, and looking for a job. Can't really find anything. I come across this ad for a gym that just opened up. It's a powerlifting joint, and they said they need personal trainers. So I go check this place out, and they're like, yeah, we were kind of hoping for someone that had their clientele built up, and then you could pay rent and
Right.
use this place, right? So I was like, well, I don't have any clients. So I just did the whole push a broom, take care of the gym type thing. Lived in the back for a while, lived in my car for a while, and just they were actually really good to me. They said, all right, if you keep up on the gym, if you run it for us, we'll give you a little bit of money, and you can build your business here.
Right.
So I love that, because that's all on me, and I can control everything, right? I can build my shit. I can do what I want, just like the platform. And so that's, I looked at that as, I might not be making a lot of money right now, but I have a gym. I don't have to pay rent, and I have every opportunity in the world, even if I have to go out on the fucking street and like just fucking evangelical style look for clients. Like,
Yeah.
I can do it. So it was personal training, just your regular overweight, middle-aged mom type client to start. Luckily, like I said, it was a powerlifting joint, and there was just a lot of people willing to just let me kind of experiment and be like, we're going to do strength training stuff because this is what I know, and this is what's fun for you, and it's working. So
Yeah.
I was able to, I took like probably close to 20 clients that were just never competed before in anything, never were athletes. They're just kind of like I said, like overweight parents, and got them all into competing, handful of times. Had a lot of fun with that. So that was my first experience with like actually coaching competitive powerlifters.
Gotcha.
But it was a really good learning experience, because you have all these blank slates and so many different types of bodies to try these different methods on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet it was. And it was really grassroots then, kind of the way that you came up through it, like a lot of guys do, but you kind of carved out your own niche. And I have a feeling it had a lot to do with your injury, because I see that a lot of your programming has got a ton of mobility and maintenance built into it, which is very, I shouldn't say it's unique, but it is unique, because you can go through 100 coaches and maybe only one or two really understand the dynamic of that. And I picked up on that through a lot of your training. I'm guessing that was really that was real applicable for you even back then.
Yeah. Actually, it's actually the fatigue management about my programs that I think is what would make it more unique.
Okay.
Because it was an overexhaustion injury. It wasn't a mobility injury.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the one thing that I'm even more mindful of when I'm programming than the mobility stuff.
So when you started kind of going down your path, and it was really grassroots from the way you started, and then you started probably working with more of the amateur athlete, of course. I'm guessing it's hard to get these high level guys to take a chance with you until you've kind of built your resume. But at the same time, you were also doing a lot of training yourself. So you were kind of living by an example, I'm guessing.
Yep. Yeah, that was, remember when I said I want to take the best part of the coaches I had and put them together?
Yeah.
So my college wrestling coach, he was an Olympian, not bodybuilding, he was Greco-Roman wrestler in the Olympics in 2004 and 2008.
Okay.
That motherfucker trained. And he said the whole time he would out-train every single one of us. The motherfucker had 10 kids, he was 45 years old, he was jacked, he was muscular, he could do 100 pull-ups, was always bragging about his biceps and his big beard. And he was just so, like, he'd be fucking jumping in the circle with the big guys, just cranking on our head and just talking to us the whole time, like, I'm your fucking coach, I'm leading by example, this is what it takes.
Yeah.
And so the whole room would train harder because you don't have a guy just sitting around.
Right.
And so that's one thing that just gets me so aggressive and so passionate. Sometimes when I'm going through a heavy training cycle, one of the things I'll start to remind myself is you got people watching and you're responsible for doing this correctly and doing it hard.
Right.
And that really gets me going.
Yeah, that really carries over to in the way you project yourself, certainly the way other people see you, like I have before I've got an opportunity to meet you here. Did you compete yourself at all, Taylor? I know you're getting ready to do some things now, was this kind of a reinvention of yourself, or did you do some competitions yourself back in the day?
Yeah, I've competed 5 times in strongman.
Oh, okay.
First one was in 2015. It actually was, I think, the Cotton Brothers?
I heard of them, yes.
The year they took first and second at USS Nationals, I blew my back out related to the same injury that I had in college.
Wow.
So I took a 0 on the deadlift. I was actually 1 point away from podium and 2 points away from winning it. But a 0 at a 45-man show, that you're done.
Yeah.
I did take 4th place there. So that was a good show for me. It just was, I fucking blew my shit up. That was when I went with Kabuki and came off the gear and the food and everything and did like a whole 2-year like reset.
I read something that you said about Chris Stuffin changing your life, the mad scientist, and I thought that was pretty impactful. Basically saying, hey, if you love it, you're going to do it. And I guess, can you share that story real quick that for people that didn't read it?
Yeah, I can. That was really cool, man. So, as a wrestler, like I've been taught my whole life, like it's on you, right? But sometimes we need to be reminded of that. And I was at a spot in my life where this was actually like 3 weeks before I met Ben, which makes it all seem like, not coincidence, but what happened? I lost my job and I was getting ready to start a new job, but I had enough money saved up for like 6 months to live and to eat. I had that all budgeted out and I had a little bit left over and I was like, all right, this is my last attempt. I'm going to go to Kabuki and do the seminar, and trying to pursue their educational side was like, at the time in my head, I was like, okay, what more can I do? And that was kind of my like all in thing. but that wasn't the all-in thing. I actually like got there, and it's just like you can't do much out of a seminar. Like it taught me a shit ton, but it wasn't like it's not going to be like life-changing, right?
Right.
So, but in doing so, I made that opportunity to meet Chris, and I had a feeling like I wanted something out of Chris, but I didn't know what, because he's always been such an inspiration to me. So I actually, like when I got there, I started talking shit to him, because I was like, I want this guy to remember me, and no one talks shit to Chris Stuffin. So I started talking shit about how his dead bug sucks. And this was like 3 days before that squat. He looked at me like, who the fuck is this skinny little string bean mustache motherfucker? And just walked right by me, didn't even say anything. That was really cool. And then, yeah, just the whole, just seeing the lab, seeing, Brandon, Kyle was my coach at the time, how they operated. I was so mind blown, because I'm like, these guys aren't talking about anything hard or complex. They're just wrapping it up and selling it really good. And I can do that just as good as they are. And it just kind of made me realize, like, this industry is, as smart as they are, I'm not trying to insult them, but this industry isn't like this unobtainable like geniuses on a pedestal.
Right.
It's just people who packaged it a little bit better.
Well,
I mean?
and I guess I one thing I've always said is nobody's really reinventing the wheel out there. It's just how they're presenting the wheel, really.
We're lifting barbells. We're not doing
That's
anything
right.
complex.
Yeah. I love that. I love that story about Chris Duff, and for those of you out there, the mad scientist Chris Duff, and that haven't heard of him, you've been living under a rock your entire lifting life. But great dude. Yeah, it's interesting you made comment about Ben, because Ben and you are kind of, you're connected. You truly are, in a way. I think that a lot of people recognize him, and they recognize you, and they recognize you together, because you both kind of came up through all this together. I mean, Ben's success in powerlifting attributed a big part to you, and then that crossover to bodybuilding, which I found amazing. I was cheering it on. I love crossover athletes. I'll talk about that in a minute. And now it looks like you're on another path, and not only Ben, but you as well. And you're going back to your strongman roots. And I'm guessing that injury is pretty well healed up by now, huh?
It's healed up enough to Band-Aid until we get the job done.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've been injured before. You know, there's signs where it's coming and coming, and you're putting it off, sort of thing. It's to the point where it's manageable, but I don't think it'll ever be done until I'm done.
Right.
That makes sense.
Of course. Yeah, it makes complete sense to any guy out there that puts it in like you do. Your basic principles, and it's probably much more difficult to define on a podcast and even on a piece of paper, but you use power building a lot in your phrase, in the way you phrase things. It's kind of your foundation, or I could say your methodology behind the way you train power builders or power lifters, bodybuilders, and strongmen. You tend to use the same principles. Are there some key principles out of those that you can share real quick that you find that crossover really well?
Well, in all three sports, we're using our muscles, right?
Right.
And we just talked about how simple lifting barbells is. The function of a single muscle, is even simpler. It can only do so many things. A lat can only move in so many directions and do so many things, right? So when you look at these three sports, it appears as though they're three completely different sports, but they're not. You're just using your muscle in a slightly different way. You're being judged slightly differently, but the requirements to grow that muscle are exactly the same for all three sports. And where people get confused is they say, they confuse the skill building with the muscle building, right? The skill is what we're doing on the platform. That's what we're competing in, right? But the muscle is going to be built the same way. So, for example, let me just give you an example. So, in bodybuilding, we do a lat spread, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me put my hands right where they need to be for a squat. My lats are in the same position, functioning in the same way. Now let me get ready to press a log.
Sure.
Right? The same function is required of them. And so really when you look at the program, it might look the same just from the exercise selection point, but the placement of the exercise during the week, pairing it with which, skill building lifts we're working on, is going to look different sport to sport. Does that make sense?
It does. So what you're saying then essentially is, as you're carrying over that basic principle through all three sports, the programming from the bird's eye perspective is very similar. You probably can't tell the difference. Are there any slight modifications? I mean, outside of, obviously of the big three when you're powerlifting and implement training, or do you train the same way and then more of a show prep for your implements in your big three if you were powerlifting with the same power building technique?
So it's kind of an in-season, off-season thing, and the purposes of the exercises just change.
Okay.
So in the off-season, I'm going to do the most basic. I'm going to do strongman as least as I possibly can to make sure that when I go into the show, it's still there, right? Like it only takes me 1 or 2 weeks, and then I'm already in a position. There's no technique changes I have to make. I'm just in a position to progress. Like stones, for example, we've literally went through every single event and found how long I can take off without losing anything, and then how long it takes me to get back into a respectable weight with no form break.
Right.
So it's basically just bodybuilding until that time comes, and then you do that as frequently as you need to. You train those events, and then now what that allows for. Before, when I was getting ready for a show, it would take a 12-week prep. I would have to run the drugs for the whole 12 weeks. I would have to get stronger for certain implements because I wasn't strong enough to hit those weights.
Right.
Now it is, I'm already strong enough to hit any of the weights, even at nationals, just cold, not peaked.
Right.
And so that way I can only do the drugs and train for 9 to 6 weeks, and I don't have to take away from my squat, or I don't have to take away from my bench press. It might be taken away a little bit, but it's not going to take away so much that I have to train 6 to 8 weeks to get back to what I was doing. As soon as I'm done with the show, I can take my rest. I can get right back on track with the weights that I was hitting with the main lifts, so that I can continue to progress. Because ultimately, right, I'd like to compete at World's Strongest Man. I'd like to be at Giants Live one day. And I feel that having that baseline to peak from, that baseline getting higher and higher, is what's going to keep you healthy and what's going to keep you in it long term.
Yeah.
And I'm no freak like Evan Signalton, so my only chance is to get there as late as I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to outsmart everybody. Sure. Yeah, with that training. And that actually makes complete sense, because really what you're saying then is you're maintaining this strength. You're coming in then to your prep, and your prep is really only working off the rust of the implement itself, because you're able to handle the weight. The weight is really removed from the whole equation because you're already there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I followed you quite a bit, and I've been getting in your mind a little bit watching your programming without actually being trained by you, and I love it. It's almost an A/B kind of programming, because you've sort of put yourself through this to understand where those timelines are, and that's unique because a lot of guys haven't done that. So to know where that line is, where you're not losing strength when you're off compared to when you're ready to prep, that's a unique thing, and maybe not only to you. I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there, and we'll share some common friends here in a minute. But my question is, what do you attribute then? Do you attribute that style or that philosophy of training to why we're seeing so many crossover athletes now? Because obviously we're seeing it almost yearly, where these great powerlifters are becoming pro strongmen, or vice versa. Powerlifters are becoming bodybuilders, or vice versa. And we've never really seen that at such a high level before. Do you attribute it more to this philosophy and training?
I'll be completely honest with you. Ben is the only smart cross athlete that I've met.
Okay.
I honestly think a lot of these athletes that are able to cross over would adapt to just about anything you threw their way. And that's not to insult anyone, but we just haven't seen this style of training. Like, yeah, people have been doing the bodybuilding and the powerlifting style training, but it doesn't seem to be as thought out as we've been doing it, as big picture, like year at a time type thinking. It just seems more of like, oh, well, we're going to do machines for higher reps now.
Right.
And there is, I mean, that is what it is, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I actually don't really have a good answer on that because I haven't been seeing those guys, those crossover athletes train.
Gotcha.
Exceptionally smart.
Right. Ben being the one-off in that scenario, where you're saying
Yes.
essentially then these athletes that you do see with success of crossing over, they're that other category. They're going to do it in anything they do. Yeah. I can see that. So I understand you're doing a lot of your nutrition stuff, and I understand you get a lot of your nutrition stuff from the Liver King. You're a big fan of his. I understand that. Is that true?
That's not true.
Who do you think told me that?
Oh, fucking probably Haas.
No, it wasn't. It was Paul. He told me that. He knew I was doing it. Ben told me that. He told me, I asked him last night, I said, give me a question to ask Taylor that he's going to get a laugh out of. He told me right away. He says, tell him this. I'm sure he'll get a laugh.
That's hilarious.
Let's talk about that relationship for a minute, because we did an interview with Ben, I don't know, 4 months ago. And you both are very, very unique characters. I know you know this. I see you training in your robe for Christmas and doing the fun stuff you do with everybody you do. Then you see Ben, training in it or doing competitions in his dark Lord of Iron shit. And you guys are cut of the same rug, much the same philosophy. I know you bounce a lot of stuff off one another. And certainly we talk enough about Ben as we do you on our show as well. Where did you two meet? Where did that relationship start?
It was actually kind of funny because I kind of looked up to him for a while. You know that beef that you have in the gym with your bros before you become bros, and you're like,
yeah,
I can take him.
Yes.
So that was, at least on my end, because I don't even think he knew who I was, but I would see him at meets and stuff, and I'd just kind of have that like, what's this motherfucker about?
Yeah.
But I think, I can't remember. I was loading stones. I started loading stones again, and I think he just liked my technique, and so he asked me to come out to teach his guys how to lift stones. And I had never been asked to do anything like that before, so I was really excited about it. But yeah, so I went out and I was really, I don't want to say surprised because I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it said a lot about how he handled himself and how he was just like, yo, these are my guys. I'm gonna be over here. You do your thing. And that was that. He wasn't trying to like overcoach me or like whatever. It was like, I want the best for my guys. Go do it. Come grab me if you need anything. And I think that says a lot about a coach, because that shows that they're not scared to lose their guys to you. And they truly do have their guys' best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So I got nothing but good things to say about Ben.
No, and he's got nothing but good things to say about you. We've had a couple talks more than once, and he's brought your name up because he had mentioned, and this is leads into another good question. When you get to coaching perspectives like you do, and you sharing thoughts and ideas, I know there's a lot of coaches out there, but there's probably only a few that are on your inner circle that you can bounce ideas and thoughts and new concepts off of. I know he's one of those guys for you. Do you have other people as well? Do you talk to Chris Stuffin anymore? Is he a big part of your life still?
Chris seems to be done with the fitness stuff.
Okay. I just assumed maybe you guys kept in touch after that seminar and your success so far.
We've talked a couple times, but he strikes me as a guy that's I don't know that he has that relationship with anyone. I think he's just kind of constantly doing his thing.
Who do you have that relationship with, Taylor? Is there anybody that you kind of, have those powwows with to kind of throw ideas off of other than Ben?
Yeah, so Ben, obviously, uh, Eric Haas, I'm not sure if you know who that is.
I do, yeah.
He's a master's strongman competitor.
Yep.
Okay. Adam Dirks, he's more for strongman specific stuff. Adam Bremer, who is the head coach at MI40, pro bodybuilding gym in Tampa.
Yep.
He's my go-to bodybuilding guy. I will talk to Mike Israel once in a while. And then I have a guy, Ezra Salmon. You probably never heard of him. He was, he's never too successful of a power lifter. He got more into the, like coaches lacrosse and football, like high level performance athletes like that.
Yeah.
But he was kind of my first mentor and was the one to tell me to go with Kabuki when I was looking for a coach. So for a while he was, he kind of, we both did our coaching at that same gym, and so we worked side by side. Just spent a lot of time together. But so he is someone that's seen me come up, and I talk to him quite a bit still.
Do you throw out a lot of performance type work into a lot of your programming, being that was a part of your life once? I know on Instagram and these social medias, we only get bits and pieces of what you're actually doing because the big lifts everybody wants to see, but do you do a lot of the performance stuff mixed in your programming?
What do you mean by the performance?
Well, I think more dynamic type movements, especially now that you're getting back into strongman and training Ben for that. Your movement type of stuff, because obviously we know not everything's static, and being a power lifter or a bodybuilder, generally you're not moving like that. So does that come more from your mobility training? Do you do stuff like that?
It seems as though a lot of the explosiveness is from early development.
Okay.
And it seems as though I don't have to practice that. It almost seems if I practice that, I can hurt myself. But I do a lot of walking, like probably at least an hour of cardio a day of just steady state cardio. That's not really counted as cardio, just my general like walking and moving.
Right. Just keeping things moving.
Yeah, but I think, and this is something I picked up from Kabuki, I think that you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, if you will, on the performance stuff by optimizing the way that you move. And I'm not just saying like make your technique perfect, but once it's perfect, how do you make it better? How do you continue making it better? How do you make this movement even better quality? Obviously that tops out at some point and it is perfect, but just being so diligent on making sure there's never ever a rep done that isn't that level of quality, I think holds a lot more value than just like traditional speed work or whatever, you know what I mean?
So you pretty much then, if I get this right, you break down your movement the same way you would break down a static lift. You put it in parts and pieces to bring it together. I know you're a tempo guy. You like tempo. So you would treat that the same way, parts and pieces into your dynamic or your more movement type stuff. Would that be accurate?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that a little bit about, and I was curious because you're a bigger guy, and to just kind of jump into strongman without moving, it's just a recipe for disaster, I would guess. I mean, yeah.
So like, I didn't film much of this because it was, 1 to 2 plates on the bar, but I spent probably the last 6 weeks running farmers. Just like the only intent was how slow can I go? How hard can I connect to the ground with each step?
Right.
Finding the optimal distance between each step. Everything that can be ironed out so that the only thing that I need to worry about come prep time is putting weight on the bar.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Yeah. That's a very systematic way of I love it. I love it. I mean, I can go on and on about it. I never looked at it from that perspective, but yeah, you avoid any complication like that. You basically iron out the entire movement you take all the thinking off the table, and then it only becomes weight at that point, which ultimately is what wins contests for us.
And that's the easy one to add.
Right.
Just, you iron everything else out, you eat, and you take your supplements, you can add weight to the bar. Them's the rules, you know?
Yeah, hey, pretty simple. Let's break it down. Don't tell all your secrets. So you're going into the season. Let's talk about some guys you're training right now. You're training Evan Signalton this year. A big year for him. I talked about him on my show today. I mean, he's a young guy with a Superman potential. I mean, I expect big things out of him this year, as I'm sure you do with your as his coach. I don't share all the secrets, but how are you working with him right now? What's on the horizon?
Evan in a minute. Evan's a little bit of a wild card. He has so much fucking potential. I work with him on his diet and his supplements, but I have no idea how much of it he follows.
I got you. You're just going in with a ton of raw talent. You're trying to work off some of the roughness off the edges, it sounds like.
Yeah, he's a unique one, and it's just one of those situations where if I could be around him all the time, that's what he needs. Whether it's me, whether it's his coach Adam and Kim, but that's the kind of motherfucker he is. Is that, like, as much potential as he has to be great, he's got that much potential to fuck up.
You're right.
And
right.
That's not to be an insult. That's just.
It's a compliment in my book, because it really is a compliment. There's a lot of guys we've known throughout the years that have kind of fell one way or fell the other. He was my pick today to win the Shaw Classic, by the way, when I did my show for my predictions. So nice. I've got hope out for him. He's one of my dark horses that I think is going to have a great year. I know you work closer with Ben than anybody else. Obviously, you and Ben have become really, really close friends over the years. Do you guys live in the same area? That way you get a chance to train with Ben a lot?
We live together.
Oh, you do? Well, that explains it then. Yeah.
We're roommates.
Perfect. Easy to keep each other accountable on this new program.
Oh, it's good. Every night we talk to each other, talk about weights, talk about what we're eating.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Full lifestyle coaching both ways.
Yeah, that really does help, doesn't it? He's your coach at the same time, keeps you accountable to the things you're doing and vice versa. I know you love to travel around and meet all these different people and all these different sports and communities and these great coaches. We talked briefly before we started the show that you had a big 2021 traveling and doing a lot of that stuff. I think you went to this Max Stone competition, if I'm not mistaken. Dirks was there that won that. Is it amazing you right now, or are you just not surprised that particularly in some of these 105 and 90 kilogram class guys and strongmen, that they're just doing stuff that we never thought imaginable 10 years ago? 500-pound stone, you can't tell me you saw that coming.
I think it's about damn time.
Yeah.
Because if we can see Stoneman do 300 kilograms, what's to stop? So here's my thing. I don't think the 231 class has been tapped into that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We look at how many holes, all the best guys in 231, they have drastic holes in some of their lifts. And we don't really have well-rounded equivalents of like Martins in those top guys where they're just completely well-rounded athletes, no holes in the game. We don't really have many of those as 231s.
Right.
And that kind of tells me the sport's a little bit undeveloped. So I think 500 pounds should be the standard for 231 guys.
I think it just became the standard. Absolutely.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
Two guys did.
Every guy there broke that record, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, when they went into it, it was just they were ball chasing the record on the same day and re-breaking it over and over again.
Yep.
It's a conversation that I have a lot about these lighter classes, because you're right. They're super athletic and super strong. I'm sure Ben's competing 231, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be fun to watch. And what a great season with him now with Strength Elite and the series that Anthony Furman's doing. Ben's just going to have a blast out there. Did he do his qualification, or what's the path for you guys? Can you explain whereabouts you're going to be heading in this strongman season, and of course where you're hoping to end up?
Yeah. So I'm sure, as you know, the strongman court pro card doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Right.
You know, the USS shit, the OSG, it's kind of like you don't really need the card to be pro. You just have to end up winning and get there. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Kevin Ferris is now pro at strongman court, but he's a fucking professional, right?
Right.
So this is more of a 2-year plan for me because I want to be a professional, but I want it to be in the same way that Ben won his pro card for bodybuilding. I want it to be like, goddamn, that's the real deal. That is a professional.
Right.
No questions asked. So this year is Strongman Corp. Next year I will do USS Nationals in the summer and try to do their overseas thing, or the Arnold, whatever you qualify for the winning the heaviest class.
Yeah.
And then OSG at the end of 2023.
So what you're saying is
no matter
how you progress in the next year and a half, you're focused on any of these select invites or any of these online qualifications. You've got kind of a path and you're going to stick to, and okay. Yeah.
Something really big would have to come up. But man, I was even talking to Haas the other day and he's like, I wouldn't touch that USS shit until they actually pay out, until they actually do a year of it and show that they're for real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to prep for a show and then not get paid out.
Yeah, we've said it quite a bit. It's pretty messy right now at that kind of, at the organizational level. I mean, I like what Anthony's doing with the strength lead stuff. It's giving guys an opportunity kind of to, put their feet to the fire. If you're strong enough to lift the weight, lift the weight. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about there. Hopefully we'll see some heavyweight stuff come that way too. What about Ben? I'm sure maybe Ben with us since you guys are training together. Has he got the same approach as you, or is he going to go a different route?
A little bit different. So Ben is actually, the goal for him is kind of to more have fun. Like I'm sure if you've been following Ben for a while, it's pretty evident that he's just a badass motherfucker and he needs to push it at something.
No doubt. Yeah.
And so we're more working on kind of his life goals, and it's really cool because he's about as mature as it gets as a high performance athlete, right? He's 35, coming on 36 this year. I'm about to turn 27, and I'm just getting started in my career. So we're both in very different, very complementary places as athletes.
Yeah. Right.
So I think he wants to win his pro card. We haven't even talked about next year. I'm sure next year we'll do like pro bodybuilding show or something like that. He still wants to have a total. He still wants to do a pro show. But this year is let's push, but not like the drugs won't be pushed in the same way that we push for the pro card. It'll be more like how can Ben find fulfillment in all this without it being like, let's put it all on the line sort of thing.
Let's enjoy the ride a little bit, have some fun.
Yeah,
absolutely. Totally get it. I made a prediction on my very first podcast show. And just one more thing about Ben, because I know Ben's a topic of conversation everywhere you go. I said to my partner, I said, he's going to be the first guy ever. And if I'm wrong about this, stop me right now. The first guy ever to have 3 pro statuses, 3 different lifting classes, bodybuilding, powerlifting, and strongman. First one to ever do it. And I truly believe he's the guy. So unless I'm wrong, would he be the first?
I think you're on to our goals. I don't know.
I think so. I had a feeling. Yeah. I said you watched our show. That's why. And I know you didn't, but I said they watched our show. That's where they got that idea from. So your nutrition, let's talk about that real quick, because I know you're working with Ben. Ben had mentioned you're working with Ben on his nutrition a little bit right now. You seem to be pretty versed in that, which is unusual, right? Because a lot of coaches generally farm that out. I mean, do you get a lot of, do you find yourself immersed in that a little more these days as you're finding yourself in not only that, working with Ben in these different sports? Are you finding a unique combination of the way that works, or is that pretty nuts and bolts for you as well? Or do you guys kind of, because you're dealing with strongman now, you're worried about weight? I know Ben might, but probably not you. Or are you trying to be a little more athletic with it?
For my personal nutrition?
Yeah.
So for nationals, it's whatever it takes kind of situation. I'll treat that show like the real deal. It's big time. This show, the qualifying show, I'd like to win it. I look at it in the same way as we talked about implements, where if I can be stronger at a lower body weight for a longer amount of time, I'm stronger in the long run, because I can always go up from that.
Yeah.
So I treat junk food and processed food and bulking as like another gear. Like I know I've done it so many times that I know, okay, if I plateau, I can just turn it on with the food.
Gotcha.
And it's an automatic another step up.
Yeah.
And then on that same note, I've never had this not happen, but every time I do that, I'll step it up, push the food, push the body weight. When I come down, I never lose any strength from that. So I always try to go up, come down, go up, come down, and just make that. I can always put on about 20, 30 pounds, and then it'll take me 2 or 3 times of going up and down to get to that weight until that top weight is now my bottom weight.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you're saying essentially is, as you start to progress with your weight, you wait till your strength catches up to that, right? So you're essentially, so you're not one of these guys that are bogging themselves down with weight like a lot of guys tend to do. You're waiting until you're proficient before everything starts moving forward.
As soon as I get a little bogged down, I hold that for as long as I can.
Okay.
Still being able to perform. And then I let myself come down a little bit.
Gotcha.
And I don't go lower than depleting myself, and
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just stretch those phases for longer rather than making them drastic.
Yeah. So it's very similar to your, oddly enough, it's very similar to your strength program. Yeah. It's kind of piece of thought there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you did a video, probably I enjoyed this video you did probably more than any of them, and I love them all. But you talked about toughness. Remember that video you did about puking? Where you gotta puke at least once to know where that line's at. I just wanted to make reference to that real quick while I had you on, because I thought that was just articulated beautifully. It was in your own style, Taylor. In your own style, man, you killed it. And it couldn't have been any more true. And I talked about you on the podcast when I tagged you that one time, because that was what we were talking about. And where did you find that? Was that back in the wrestling days when you found that line? That, I mean, because you got to know where that's at before you talk about it. When did that really start with you, and how do you transfer that over to your clients to make sure that they find it?
I remember the exact workout that happened. I was in 6th grade, and my dad had me go to the high school camp for wrestling that year. And I got my fucking piss pounded all weekend. And we were doing a suicide sprint workout after a 3-hour practice. And it was one of those situations where I physically could not make the time. Like, the coach was like, nobody's leaving until everybody makes the time. I'm this little fat 6th grader training with 11th and 12th graders getting ready to go to college. And the time is like 10 seconds past what I can make. And everyone's just like, they're getting super mad at me. Like, I don't think I ever made the time. I think he just like had mercy on me. But like, man, we did that shit 20 times before he let me leave.
Yeah.
And I just remember like puking and snotting and fucking had bloody nose that day and twisted ankle and just like everything. And I'm riding home, and my dad's just like, cool, like, you ready to go back tomorrow? And I'm like, this isn't, like, we're not done, like, what the fuck?
Oh, man, that is great.
I just remember that talk he gave me, and he's just like, look, I want you to remember this, like, your body wanted to quit, or I'm sorry, your mind wanted to quit, but you were able to keep going. You thought you were done 2 sprints in, and you did 20 more reps.
Yeah. Because
your body can. So it doesn't matter what your mind's thinking.
Yeah.
Just ignore that. And then ever since then, it was like, you don't sit out from practice unless your bone is broken.
What a life lesson, man. What a life lesson that is. I was in the military. I didn't have the fortunate opportunity to learn that lesson until I was in the military. And they have the same mentality that coach did, right? Take you past where your brain thinks you should have stopped, long beyond it. I think the average lifter out there, and you might agree with me, probably only ever works to 60%, and doesn't know where that 99% line is at. Yeah, that was a great video. I really enjoyed that. I know you're not a big fan of RPE. I found this out in my interview with Ben. As a matter of fact, he had made a mention to me that you guys like the 2-man RPE. Is that still a part of your training to try to get it across to your athletes? How do you get them to understand where 9 and 10 are at?
Honestly, you've seen this. How often is it where someone hits an RPE 9 and they're like, hell yeah, that was sub 6?
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
honestly, most of my clients, if they're on the opposite side where they're more conservative, I'll just be like, cool, like,
right.
Yeah, that was a 6, but call it an 8, and then I'm just going to go in. So I'll use I use percentages, RIR, RPE, and just like a sentence, like like I'm describing it to a kindergartner of how I want that intensity to look.
Right.
So if they're not going as intense on the RPE, I'll just prescribe set weights.
Yeah, you kind of dig into their own sort of formula for that, and you figure out where it actually is compared to where they say it is. Yeah,
I see what they're trying to communicate with an RPE 8, and then in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, that's a 6, so we're going to add 20 pounds to that, and they're going to get over it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have taken that stand as coaches with that same sort of dynamic with their people they're training, because it's not real. I'm not a huge fan of it myself, but for the same reason you're not. It's almost like you have to decipher it to figure out what it really is for certain people. But it makes a good talking point anyhow, I guess we can say. But listen, Taylor, I know we've been on for about an hour now, man, and I got to tell you, it was every bit as fun as I thought it would be to have a chat with you. And I got a feeling our next conversation is even going to be better, man. We're just getting acquainted.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yes.
I follow you all the time, and I talk about you all the time. I think you're one of those great young coaches that is going to be around longer than I am, brother. And I can't wait to have my son look you up when he starts lifting weights. I'll tell you right now. So again, I appreciate
blood pressure willing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, you're the real deal, bro. And I just enjoyed every bit of this. So yeah, thanks again for coming on with me. And if you stick around after the interview, I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, man.
All right. Thanks, Taylor.